What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show. I am excited to be back. I'm sorry, I've been kind of chaotic all over the place, traveling to London, being back and forth, but I promise that we are about to be on a more regular schedule now that all of that international travel is done. But today, coming off the heels of that international travel, the London game where we saw the Jaguars and the Rams, I want to talk about the Rams and their radical approach and how it could catch fire in the National Football League. I also want to talk about the State of the Union with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're heading to the bye week at 4-3. And there's some other news that we want to talk about around the league, namely Mike McDaniel squarely on the hot seat in Miami. The New York Jets are a mess, and what the LA Chargers should do when it comes to upgrading their offensive line that has been ravaged by injuries. But first, let's talk about the London game, and the London game that I was at last Sunday. By now, you know, the LA Rams absolutely mollywopped the Jacksonville Jaguars in Wembley Stadium, 35-7. It was a very disappointing performance from the Jags, but I think we need to focus on the Rams and what they absolutely did. They looked like a juggernaut from the beginning of the game to the end. And the biggest surprise is Jacksonville is normally dominated and had their way with opponents in these London games. They understand the lay of the land. They have a way of going about doing it where they're always prepared. And other teams, due to the unfamiliarity of coming overseas and trying to play a game, typically they struggle. The Jaguars jump on them, knock them out, and they're able to walk away with wins. We've seen this consistently when this team has played overseas. However, the Rams did something that was, I would say, radical. It was different. It was bold. And it's not surprising given who their coach is, Sean McVay. The Rams opted to take a different approach where they really were on a 24-hour stay overseas. They played their game in week 6 against the Baltimore Ravens, enjoyed a 17-3 win over the Ravens, but then stayed in Baltimore for the week. Spent the practice week at Camden Yards, the home of the Baltimore Orioles. They practiced, they did their things there. They had fellowship and camaraderie because they were together, basically recreating training camp across the country from their normal facilities. But by being on the East Coast, what they were to do in anticipation of making the trip to London, it was a shorter flight. What most teams opt to do is they go over early, try and get their bodies on the right time and body clock and those things. And maybe it works out for them, but it's such a different rhythm for them because they practice part of the week at their normal spot, the other part of the week over in London. Maybe they never get quality work done. Well, what the Rams did is they spent the entire practice week in Baltimore, get it all done. And let's just say you have to understand what an NFL schedule is like. You play on Sunday, you come watch the film on Monday with the live. Tuesday is the mandatory day off for the players. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, your practice days, and then Saturday is a walkthrough. The Rams decided to do all of that stuff in Baltimore. They practiced 3 days. They flew over Friday afternoon, which put them in London Sunday midday. They had a walkthrough, and then it was rest, relax, and get ready for the game. A lot of times you would think, man, aren't they going to be out of sorts? It's weird to travel, and you only did 24 hours. It doesn't seem like you would fully adjust. Well, I can tell you by the way the team looked and performed, they were ready and raring to go. And I believe the secret sauce to their success in doing it this way, by being on the West Coast, on the East Coast, they already took half of the trip away. I did the flight going from LA to London. I did it on Friday night, landed Saturday around 6 p.m., and it was an 11-hour flight. I was in a bit of a fog during the game. If I had to play in the game, I probably could have gutted it out and sucked it up. But it's different than what the Rams did. Because the Rams were already halfway home, this was very similar to a team on the East Coast flying out west, making that kind of departure. Or I could say a team from the West going to the East, where you make this long trip. You're in a different time zone, but you kind of acclimate to being the West Coast team playing the 1 o'clock game, which is actually a 10 o'clock game for you. By doing this, what the Rams were able to do is they cut down the time difference per se, because they spent basically a week and some change on East Coast time. So this wasn't as big of a deal because they went over early. But what I will say is, after seeing how they perform, more teams are going to opt for maybe the turn and burn approach, which is kind of like coming off a red eye and jumping right into work. I do that all the time. For some people, that is disruptive. But I think if your guys know ahead of time what you're going to do, I think they can get prepared. You take all the excuses and then you go play. Considering how they won, I definitely would take that approach if I'm a team that has to make it overseas. Oh, by the way, the Rams in 2026, they play one of their international games in Melbourne, Australia, where they're the host team. I think they'll have this thing kind of figured out, and it will help them in future international games because they had so much success with this one. Now, their counterpart, the Jacksonville Jaguars, not the way that you want to enter the bye week, coming on a 2-game losing streak. Last 2 games, the Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams absolutely beat them up in a fashion in which the Jaguars profess to want to play. They want to be a physical team. They eventually want to be a team that's the bully on the block. Well, the only way to do that is you have to be trench warriors at the line of scrimmage. And I can say in both of these games, dominated at the point of attack. The Seattle game, couldn't hold up, couldn't make it. Going into the bye week, not exactly the way that the Jaguars wanted to perform. They took on 2 NFC West teams that are known for being bullies. And the Jaguars eventually want to be a team that is like that. Well, when you play the Seattle Seahawks and you get dominated at a point of attack, and then you go overseas and watch the Rams dominate you at the line of scrimmage, it exposed some flaws. You think about the number of sacks that they've given up over the last 2 weeks, maybe 14, 15 sacks that they've allowed, and the offensive line has absolutely been dominated by young, hungry defenders. Doesn't bode well for how you want to play. This is a team that wants to run the ball. They want to set up Trevor Lawrence for success by throwing off play action and doing those things, but they couldn't establish the run and they couldn't protect the quarterback. So now the quarterback is having to do more on his own without the protection of being able to dictate the terms to the defense. That is troubling. And it's troubling because the first few weeks of the season, man, the offensive line was stellar. So that tells me over the bye week, you got to go back to the drawing board. You got to figure out what protection schemes work for them. You got to figure out the lineup that works and find a way to get better. The more troubling part of it is not the line of scrimmage, because you're going to have games like that. This is a team where we thought going into it, it was going to be players over plays, meaning you're going to put the ball in the hands of the best players. Didn't really matter what plays that Liam Cohen called. He was going to put together an offense that allowed those guys to shine. Through 7 games, the disappointment is that some of the players that you were counting on are underperforming. Namely, you haven't gotten the production that you want to see from Brian Thomas Jr. He's been saddled by drops, and just too many drops, particularly on in-breaking routes and traffic, have stalled drives, have cost the team points, and really maybe it's cost the team a game or two because he had a critical drop in a moment where you really need your number 1 receiver to come through. You now have others who've also been victimized by drops that have really hurt you. De'Ami Brown and Parker Washington have dropped the ball, and it makes it very, very hard to sustain drives when your pass catchers on the perimeter can't make the routine plays routinely. When you add in the fact that Trevor Lawrence has been a bit inconsistent when it comes to the accuracy and ball placement, now you have all these negative forces working in play at one time. When Trevor throws it on time, the guys don't catch it. When the guys are open, Trevor misfires, and the offense can never gain the rhythm that you want to see. Even though they've won 4 games with the offense being up and down, at some point, when we talk about 10 is the magic number to get to the postseason, Trevor Lawrence and the pass catchers have to figure it out. They got to be on the same page. That'll take diligent work and practice throughout the course of the bye week, but it also may take Liam Cohen reshuffling the deck to make sure that you're prioritizing the right things and the right people when it comes to who gets the ball. Me, I'm looking at this team and I'm saying Travis Hunter is the number 1 receiver, not because he's the most polished player, but he's the most consistent and reliable when it comes to catching it. Maybe you can find a way to create the packages where he is featured in those routes that are over the middle, that are crossing routes, that are right over the middle of the field, where he can get the ball in traffic. Brian Thomas Jr. is still good and still a dominant player, but this year, for whatever reason, he's caught the ball better on vertical routes and things that are outbreaking to the sideline, where rather than kind of beat your head against the wall, maybe you say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild the offense and design it where Brian Thomas Jr. catches things that are down the field, or he catches things that are breaking out towards the sideline. Travis Hunter will put him in a role where he does more of the crossing routes and the things that are in breaking at intermediate levels So we have our best pass catcher doing what he does really well, catch the ball in traffic, and our best playmaker doing what he does well, which is catch the ball in space, running away from people. Parker Washington is the trick bag. He's a guy that can do a bunch of different things. He has just been inconsistent. However, when he's on his game, he's a big play threat. You want to continue to keep him involved. The same can be said for De'Ami Brown, who you brought in as a marquee free agent, someone on a 1-year, $10 million deal who has big-time potential. He just has turned that potential into plays and production that registers week after week in the stat sheet. Overall, to me, a few things have to happen for the team during the bye week. One, you got to get everyone in the building on the same page on offense. Make sure everyone understands exactly what they're doing. Eliminate the pre-snap penalties that has really hurt them. Illegal shifts and motions, neutral zone infractions, and all those things. Get all of that out. Secondly, you want to make sure that the offensive line figures out what they need to do so Travis Etienne can continue to be a big part of this offense as a runner. The better the Jaguars runner, the better the offense flows and the more impactful the play action game is, because you really have to respect the run. If the Jaguars can fix their issues with the offensive line and have the receiving core on the same page with the franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, this gives them a chance to get back to it, particularly when we're going to talk about the defense, which has been one of the best in the business at turning it over. People are asking, well, why have the turnovers dried up? Well, they're drying up because the offense is no longer dictating the turns and playing with the lead. They're playing from behind. And when teams are ahead, they're more inclined to run the ball than throw it. And if they are throwing it, they're throwing high percentage passes that aren't necessarily putting the ball in harm's way. That's why the Jaguars can't turn it over. Final point when it comes to the Jags and their defense, got to stop the run on early down so you can force quarterbacks into passing situations against loaded coverage until the Jaguars consistently and persistently stop the run game. They won't be able to dictate the terms. Moreover, they won't be able to force the turnovers on tips and overthrows thrown against the coverage that is playing vision and break defense, where the defenders are taught see ball, get ball, attack ball. Clean those things up. The Jaguars that started out as a team that has become one of the hottest and one of the best stories in the league will get back to being that as they make their way into the postseason with those simple tweaks. Now let's go from Northern Florida to South Florida, and let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins it's over, man. And I like Mike McDaniel, and I like what he did when he came in. Their offense was fun. It was creative. It was a bit of a high school offense in terms of the way they used their speed to get to the perimeter. But when you have faster athletes than the opponent, it's really easy to let those guys go to work and not spend your time creating these exotic plays where you're trying to trick everyone that you're facing. Well, the well is run dry on, hey, my team is better than yours. And right now, the Dolphins have not been able to kind of make up the gap through execution, effort, or toughness. They're sitting at 1-6. They're coming off a 31-6 loss to the Cleveland Browns. Tua Tagovailoa, your franchise quarterback, is the co-leader in the NFL with 10 interceptions. He's coming off back-to-back games with 3 interceptions, and he was asked to sit down in favor of Quinn Ewers the last time we saw the Miami Dolphins out. When you have a head coach that is struggling and a quarterback who is struggling while calling out his teammates for not showing up to these voluntary team nights where they're supposed to get together and watch film and do those things, it appears that you have a culture problem in Miami. The culture is always set by one person, and that is the head coach, and everyone has to follow suit. And what I'm seeing is a head coach who has not been able to establish a hardline culture that you need to be successful in this league. While I'm a huge advocate of players, coaches, guys that are positive, guys that want to do right by their players, it is clear to me that the discipline and detail, attention to detail, is not there for the Miami Dolphins. When you think about the success of the contemporaries, the Miami Heat have been able to be successful because they created Heat culture, which is a rigid environment that demands a lot of the players. And it's so demanding that players have to make choices on what they want to do the previous night before they go to practice. You can go out and have fun, but if you have fun at the expense of being ready to work, it's going to show up. And if it shows up, they're unafraid to let people go. In Miami, it hasn't operated like that because you have a player-friendly environment where the best players are given some luxuries and freedoms that may not necessarily be fair to the laborers, the workers, the other worker bees that are in the building. And when you create that, you can create a level of resentment and animosity to the stars, particularly when they aren't playing well. We've heard the reports of Tyreek Hill being involved in that. We heard about Jalen Ramsey being involved in those kinds of things before he was shipped out. Some of the other players that have departed were not model citizens when it came to working hard and doing all the professionalism things that you demand from veteran players. Mike McDaniel tried to change that. He talked about the culture over the offseason, trying to change it, trying to get it back to what it needs to be. However, when I hear the comments from Tua and I see the on-field product, to me, is broken and probably broken beyond repair. Now, if he hands the ball to Quinn Ewers, he's officially waving the white flag and saying that the season is over. And it's not because, like he can't play, Quinn Ewers can't play. It's because you're now going to an inexperienced rookie, a rookie that was drafted at the bottom of the draft, and you want him to save your season when you've committed so much time, energy, and effort into rebuilding Tua Tagovailoa. If Tua loses his spot because the coach has lost confidence in him, then both of them are going to be looking for jobs elsewhere when we get to the offseason. Now, the New York Jets, division rival, a team that is trying to climb over. Look, here's what I'll say about the Jets. The Jets are a mess. And the Jets are a mess just based on the odds. FanDuel Sportsbook puts the Jets' odds when it comes to over-under on win totals over at 2.5 wins. It pays out minus 160. 2.5 wins. There's 17 games in the season, and they're saying that the Jets won't get to 3. That is crazy until you look at the Jets on tape. And they are completely in disarray. From their defense, and one of the best players on defense, Sauce Gardner, struggled to win his one-on-one matchups on the outside, to the offense, which is sputtering under Justin Fields, who was signed to a 2-year, $40 million deal to be the franchise quarterback. They just haven't been able to get it done. And Justin Fields, who certainly is drawing the ire of owner Woody Johnson, is struggling to hold on to his starting spot. And this is a tough one for Aaron Glenn because he strongly endorsed Justin Fields as a candidate to be QB1 based on his experience being torched by Justin Fields as a defense coordinator with the Detroit Lions when they were getting ramrodded by the Chicago Bears. When you go all in on a quarterback like this, you expect to give him more than 6 to 7 games to prove that he's worthy of being a franchise. But man, the noise is loud, and the noise is coming from ownership, which makes it very, very difficult to ignore because now you put your neck on the line for this quarterback. And if you're unsure about his ability to handle the pressure and to turn it around, I can understand why you want to move off the spot. But moving off the spot, to me, is a thing that it won't necessarily make the team better. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran. Tyrod Taylor's record is 28, 29, and 1 as a starter. He has been solid this year, in terms of completing 43 of 69 passes, 379 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he has 2 interceptions. I would say that you're not necessarily swapping in an upgrade. You're just swapping in a more experienced player who may be able to handle the weight of expectations for this team at this moment. But when I look at the Jets at 0-7, there are too many things that you have to get fixed at once. Everyone's talking about the offense and what the offense needs to do. And you're right. They need to fix it. They got to find a way to keep Garrett Wilson involved. They got to wait for the young guys to develop on the offensive line. They need more consistency from quarterback and running back. All those things are major issues. And when you don't get that, you are susceptible to being bullied by the opponent. That's it, man. This defense was supposed to be better. When you look at the personnel and the tags that they have on that side of the ball, this should be a top 10 defense that we're talking about. But when your cornerback 1, Sauce Gardner, is struggling, it's really hard to overcome that. And when you're a guy who believes in man coverage like Aaron Glenn, but your defensive coordinator believes in zone, sometimes it can be some philosophical differences that prevents the defense from maxing out. At some point, Wilkes and Glenn have to be on the same page when it comes to how to best utilize the members of the team and work on it over and over and over again to make sure that everyone is comfortable, but more importantly, everyone is prepared to get it right. I love Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn is a draft mate. We both a class of 94 coming in this thing. He was a terrific player, and he became a very, very good coach. When you look at the work that he did in Detroit, taking them from the bottom to getting them close to the top, he deserves all the flowers. But the jump from D coordinator to head coach is a tough one, and he's seeing that. What I would say, if he and I had a conversation, I was like, man, you got to trust who you are and what you believe in. Make sure all those things that you believe in show up in your team. As a disciple and a guy who has seen Bill Parcells do this, he knows what it should look like. Look for him to be a little edgier, a little more direct, a little more forceful with the players to make sure that everyone is emptying the bucket, making sure that they're giving their best effort each and every time that they're out. But at 0-7, and with the odds not looking good, man, my guy Aaron Glenn, AG, has to find a way to win. And hopefully he finds a way to stack them together so he can get out of this hole that he's in and get back to focusing on the rebuilding efforts that he's tasked with in New York. Well, that was the Bucky Brooks Show for today. Make sure you continue to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you check out all the cool things that we're doing at the Believe Network. Make sure you pay off our sponsor, FanDuel Sportsbook. And before you get off of here, let me make sure that I pay off another sponsor, which is Delete Me. I almost forgot the sponsor that I absolutely love, Delete Me. And the reason why I love this because, look, it's easy, quick, safe. It's a very effective way to remove the personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Data brokers make profit off your data because your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This obviously can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, and harassment. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. Delete Me, I got to tell you this, as someone who has a very active online presence, look, my privacy is important to me, and Delete Me takes control of my data, and it keeps my private life private. And that's why I sign up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you join deleteme.com/pro. Use promo code PRO at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go join deleteme.com/pro. Enter code PRO at checkout. That's join deleteme.com/pro, code PRO. I told you, if you want to take care of your online presence, make sure you get Delete Me because it'll protect you and protect those that you love from the scammers that are out there. Now that I took care of that, I can finish up the show the right way. And I can tell you, look, Halloween is on the way. Make sure you get some candy corn. I'm a big fan. And for those who love me, who know me, know that candy corn is big on my list. So the next time that we have the Bucky Brooks Show, we're going to talk about candy corn a little more. Until then, check out the pod. Stay with us. I'll talk to you soon.